to the first ever ZBrush Summit. So we're super excited for everyone to be here. We're super excited to be able to stream everything to you at your computers, your iPads, your iPhones, your Rokus if you have them. Please make sure to also download the app if you want to use the live stream app to tune into this. We've got a great live audience here as well. We've got a great list of presenters today. So just again, I just want to quickly go through some of the highlights of the event for these next 3 days. We've got Disney showing some exclusive stuff from Big Hero 6. They're obviously also going to be showing some stuff from Frozen. We've got Ubisoft showing Far Cry 4, never before seen images, tomorrow. That's really exciting. Disney is also tomorrow. We also on Sunday have Red Storm showing some exclusive stuff from The Division, specifically the weapons and how they do all that within that studio. And of course, we have the ZBrush Next version being demoed during any slot that you see where there's Pixologic. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to Mr. Vance Kovacs.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome this afternoon. I've been in a car for the last couple of hours driving from Riverside County, so forgive my trafficy, congested brain. I'm Vance Kovacs. I'm an artist, concept artist, illustrator for the last 20 years, a little over 20 years. I'm going to talk about how I use ZBrush. We're going to jump into ZBrush, and I'll show you how I use it, which is pretty straightforward. You know, if you're new to ZBrush, then I think this might be an approach for you that you could utilize and learn the program. I know a small percentage of the program. It's relatively new to me, just within the last 2-3 years. It seems like every job that I'm on now, every film job, I'm using it more and more, and I dig it. It's a fun program to use for me personally, just artistically. It's got the closest feel to when I'm painting, which is my first love. You know, is just creating imagery, creating that painted frame and moving paint with a brush and that sort of thing. And ZBrush has that same feel, the same moves that I'm making when I'm painting an arm or painting anatomy. I feel like I'm doing the same thing when I'm sculpting it, but I'm doing it in 3D. So, but I'll show you that in a little bit. To start off, these are a few of the projects I've worked on over the years, and many more. Some big film projects that I've been privileged to be a part of. Most recently, Superman, Batman, which will be coming out in 2015. Got a chance to do a lot of ZBrushing on that, which I won't be showing today. So you'll get the opportunity not to see that until 2015. So a lot of the work I do, it's a couple of years before the film is even released. And you come up with all this imagery, and you have to sit on it for a couple of years and keep your mouth shut, and only show it to close friends and at Thanksgiving, and that's about it. Don't tell anybody I told you that. I started in video games. I started at Interplay Productions here in Irvine, California, in Orange County. Started as a concept artist there, started in 2D. I started with a pencil and a drawing pad, and then I slowly moved onto the computer, got a drawing tablet, got Fractal Design Painter 2, was the first program I was using. And I liked how it simulated the real thing. But you know, I'm fairly new, you know, as far as this generation. I'm a digital artist. I was born on a computer. I did my first color work and paintings on a computer before I ever really did them in real life. Now, later in my life, later in my career, I'm moving to acrylics and watercolors and exploring natural medium. And I think I have a really eclectic appetite for different tools, different mediums, and I'm real fickle, you know, throughout the year. You can ask my wife, and she'll tell you. I'm pretty moody as far as like, you know, I think it's why I've liked the career I've had for the last 10 years, which has been a freelance artist, which I'll do movie jobs, I'll still do freelance game work, I'll do illustrations for magic cards, pen and ink illustrations, anything. So 3D modeling, rendering, all that kind of thing. So I think as far as computer stuff, it's always been I've felt at home. It's never felt completely foreign to me. So A little advantage there, maybe. But I'll tell you about my learning curve when it came to ZBrush, which was, it was steep for me. And my disadvantage, which I'll talk about, was that I knew the computer. So, and I've talked to other guys in the industry that came out of like visual effects, that came out of sculpting in shops, and they moved into ZBrush, and it was not a hard transition for them. And it's the only program they'd use. Worked with a guy named Tully Summers, who's great, worked on a lot of big titles. He came right from sculpting with real clay to moving on the computer. He had this crappy little computer he was running ZBrush on, and it's all he needed. So it's a great program for that. All right. That was a little bit of my work. Sorry if it went by quick. Thanks. Thank you. Today I'm going to give you a perspective as far as an illustrator using ZBrush. If it's one thing I've seen about ZBrush, it's probably the most versatile program I've come in contact with as far as its real-world applications and what you could really do with it. The fact that you can use it as a conceptual tool, you can use it as a fun tool, you can use it for manufacturing. When I was on Men in Black 3, we had done some tests where Tully had sculpted a concept I did. This was before I was fully using ZBrush. He had sculpted it. They had sent the 3D file to a CNC router machine, and they cut out a big, big piece of foam of his ZBrush model. And the plan was that, we'd just print this stuff out, and then they'd install it on the set, paint it up, and shoot it for the film. So the fact that you can now do that, from your desktop, that's incredible to me. You could build stuff for your house. You could do all kinds of things with it. So for me, every artist has their weapons of choice. We have our tools that we like to use. We become proficient in that, not just digital artists, but traditional artists, musicians, singers. Like, we have our tool set, and we get comfortable with that tool set, and we use that tool set. For me, my list would be pencil and sketchbook. Always carrying around a little sketchbook, always doodling around. My ideas, I think that's the quickest little space for exploring a quick idea, jotting down a note, and maybe something I'll take into the computer later or take into 3D later or something. Then it's Painter, and then Photoshop, Modo, which is a 3D program I learned, which is a pretty straightforward 3D program like Maya or 3D Studio Max or any of these programs. There's a whole world of those packages, and they're all fairly similar. And if you've used one, you can usually migrate to another. And then there's ZBrush, which is kind of in a category unto itself, and I'll get into that. And then also I'll dabble once in a while in acrylics and watercolors, and really use different mediums, and just because I like it, it's fun. So. I don't generally plan too much. I'm not a big planner. Like when we go on a vacation, me and my wife, my kids, it's usually planned maybe a couple weeks beforehand. Like, hey, let's go up to the mountain. Yeah, that sounds great. All right, let's go. Jump in the car and kind of figure it all out as we go. I think I like the excitement of it. I work in a similar manner. I scribble a lot. I scratch a lot. I try to find what that image could be. I want to go through that whole process. I'm working by impulse and by inspiration. Those are my big feels. So constantly listening to music or watching films or seeing artwork or photography or anything that can really speak to me that, that's it. And I go to my drawing tablet or go to my sketchbook or and tear into it. So the quicker I can get to making art, the better for me. And some 3D programs have always had this kind of, it's not like you can just I want to create 3D, and it's there. As quick as you could take a pencil and scribble something out. There was these steps that you would have to take. It seemed to be these hurdles you have to go through, oh, no, you got to do this and then do that. And I think when I was looking at ZBrush from the outside, when people were using wow, that looks so cool, looks so fun. And I downloaded the free trial of it and tried to go that route, a couple of times and try to learn it real quick in between jobs, but It's hard to squeeze learning in a whole new program when you've got to pay bills and pay mortgage and all that sort of thing. But I wanted to, like the quick route, you know, I just wanted to get to making the art. So here's how it went for me learning ZBrush. As I said before, knowing any other 3D apps or programs is no real advantage here to learning ZBrush. It's even knowing a computer, even knowing Windows, how there's like this normal file menu up top. I mean, if you're a ZBrush user, you know it's like in alphabetical order. Like, what? Why is it that way? You know, it is what it is. And so if you're going to learn it, you just have to learn it and go back to the beginning of learning a program on a computer. So other than it uses a keyboard and a mouse, that's about the only similarity between other 3D programs. So I had to start from the beginning. So, you know, YouTube, here I come. You know, I'm typing in ZBrush tutorials, and I'm looking through them, and all these guys with different approaches, and I found that there was a problem that there were so many different approaches, and some people had pretty detailed, like whatever, a couple hour long explain like how they got setting up this creature and set up the anatomy and and then like, you know, 30 minutes, an hour into the setup, then they're like, now I start sculpting it. You know, like, what, really? Like, I just want to sculpt it. So finally, I stumbled onto a guy. Thank you, Jeff Feligno, if you're out there. I've never met you. But I saw your video, which was up on ZBrush's, I think it was on their website. He was sculpting some 3D creature, and he was a pretty laid-back guy, and everything he said resonated with me, which was, man, I just want to get sculpting, you know? I just want to get in there. He laid out these quick things, and then he was sculpting, like, seriously, within maybe a minute or two. And I thought, that's it. That's how I want to use this program. I just want to jump in. I want to pick it up like I pick up a piece of Sculpey, you know? A couple times I've been on projects where I'll design a character, and I want to see what that thing feels like. Like, I might want to draw it from a different perspective, or just get a feel for it, and so you pick up some Sculpey and you start massing out a head or something and looking at it from different points of view, and you know, you're trying to get more information in that, not just one view. I mean, one view tells you some of the story, but you know, it's like those old Bugs Bunny cartoons, you know, when the dude turns and he's flat. Like, there's more information there that needs to be described other than just one view, which I've always dealt with. So his approach was great for me. And I think he had a couple of videos. I watched through them. His was for like 3D printing, which I didn't even care about. It was just those few, like, here's how we get into the program, here's the brushes I use, and that was it. So how do I use ZBrush now? I use it in quite a different few ways. Certainly for sculpting, just to sculpt. Sometimes just opening it up and sculpting around and toying around with it and see what sort of happens is great. I use it for setting up shots, like a couple of these little frames you see here. I'll sculpt out a character. I might bring it into another program, light it, move my camera around, and figure out what's my shot for my illustration. In this case here, those two on the right were for an Assassin's Creed pen and ink project. The final product was going to be pen and ink, but I used ZBrush to set up my shots. I knew I was going to be, you know, in pen and ink, you're dealing with black and white. You're dealing with your light and your shadow. So I wanted to design those out. I wanted the light to fall on form and create a shape. And I wanted to move a light around and see different possibilities I could get from that. And then when it went to inking it, all the information was there, you know, all my tone and my shadows, my light, and then I could emulate those in ink. Down on the bottom there, when I was on 300, Rise of an Empire, we sculpted, me and another artist sculpted out all these sculptures that they were going to build in Bulgaria. They built sets in Bulgaria, so they wanted reference shots. So we sculpted these things out in ZBrush and then sent them out to this little place in Hollywood. They printed them out for a few $100, and we had a physical model, you know. And seeing that for the first time, you know, as an artist, it's just, wow, look at that. Wow, it's like the real thing right there. It's like, that's my sculpture. So those are cool to see. I'll also use it just for quick references for myself, just like a piece of Sculpey like I was talking about. I'll sculpt out a quick head, put a light on it, and okay, you know. So much of my time as an artist I'm spending looking for reference. I might do a little scribble, get a pose of a character, you know. Might be that he's holding some axe or something, going in at a dragon or something, and it's not like I can get a dragon or call up my models and like, yes, can you come over today so I can photograph you? You know, I'm a little impatient and a little lazy when it comes to that stuff, you know, so I don't do a lot of setup, so the quicker the better, you know, and I just need to get a rough idea. I just need to see how the light would fall if it was over here and, you know, what that would kind of look like. And that's usually enough, even just a quick sculpt and a light on it to tell me, that's it. So using ZBrush, like artists using a model or a cast or posing a mannequin, there was always these, you know, those art mannequins you can get at an art store, and artists would pose them so you could see things in perspective, you know, which I never used those things because it just there wasn't enough information. It was too stiff and could never really get a dynamic pose, but ZBrush is like this gooey mannequin, you know, that I can move around. It even has a mannequin built in that you can pose just like the old art mannequins, which is really cool. But I wanted to work in that manner, you know. I wanted to just set up shots just like I was working with a model, but you don't have to deal with paying anybody. You don't have to deal with calling them up on the phone. And, you know, I'm kind of a hermit, so lock myself in my studio and get to work. And ZBrush it's kind of like a studio in and of itself to get those things done. So using it for setting up poses. All these are just kind of my scraps, you know. These never see the light of day. But when I'm on a job and I need to get a pose and I have an idea and I want to play around with it, you know, I've built myself a female model and a male model of my own sculpture, so I can move that around in ZBrush and pose it and re-sculpt on it and again put a light on it and there it is, you know. Gives me the reference I need, along with real photography and other things that I piece them all together so that I can get all the information I can when I'm doing a painting or doing a paint over. So, but it's great for that. It's got the quickest, to me, it's the quickest between idea and final output. Am I talking too fast? I feel like I'm talking a mile an hour. Okay, good. Other shots here. These again I did a bunch of stuff I got called up by a publisher that said, hey, are you interested in doing pen and ink pirates? And yes, I am interested in doing pen and ink pirates. I mean, I don't get that call often, nor does anybody. And I'm a big fan of early American painters like Howard Pyle, N.C. Wyeth, and all those guys. So that was kind of a dream little project. So I wanted to do it right. I wanted to get my setups right, just like those old guys did. But I did it all in ZBrush. I'd sculpt quick little heads and get a light in there and move it around and get my shots, and that's enough for me. I'll then draw on top of that, you know, to get the layout, and then ultimately get rid of the 3D and just paint it, you know. Treat it like it's just the base to get my perspective and lighting direction and all that sort of thing. So it's great. Also, just for creature creation and for concepts, I've used ZBrush and can usually take these things pretty far, you know, into pores and cracks in the skin, and it allows you to do that. You can work quick and dirty, and it takes you a couple of minutes, or spend a day, spend 2 days, spend a week on a model really going into this thing and treating it like it's a full sculpture and putting all the details in there, and so it's great for that. So for me too, I'm also part nerd, so not just arty-farty guy. I'm big into video games, started in video games. My end plan, you know, is to make my own video games, create my own artwork to put into those worlds. Me and my partner Justin Sweet, we've already begun this process with an art book we're doing, and then ultimately going to move into video games, and we want to sculpt it ourselves. We want to do the artwork ourselves, and ZBrush will definitely be the tool that we use to do that. We can interpret our own concepts. You know, early on, before I was into games, I think it was 18 or 19, had a buddy who was into comics, And then I was really into video games, and I was kind of like, wow, what should I do, you know? I did a couple little comic conventions, like in Long Beach, like at some hotel or something, some like ballroom. It was like a mini Comic-Con, like 2 rows, you know, and I think I had my artwork out, and realized like the labor of love that comics are. I'm a huge fan of comics, but to do it as a living, you're definitely not doing it for the money. You know, you are doing it because you love to do this, and you're cranking out drawings and artwork. But as I started exploring it, you know, it was, I really didn't like the idea that I would, well, wait, you're either the penciler or the inker or the colorist. Like, I don't want to give someone my artwork. Like, I want to do that myself. I want to ink it, and I want to color it, and I want to paint it, and I want to put it together, and I want to design it. I want to do the whole thing. So, my inner control freak, you know, sort of came out, you know, and I got into video games where, you know, you could paint it, do it, and you could actually start putting models, create your own models, your own texture maps, and put those into the game. And I think that really appealed to me, to this part in me artistically that wants to see the whole thing through, you know. When I'm doing illustrations, I'm in my own world. You know, there might not be a script yet. The director might not be involved yet, and I'm a mini director, and I'm the mini production designer, and I'm the mini lighter. I'm doing the whole thing in one shot in one illustration. So to do that, to extrapolate that even further, to make my own game, to design the world the way I see it, the characters, how things will feel, how things are lit, a real appeal to me. So using ZBrush to do that definitely is the stepping stone. A few other shots here. Almost wrapped up, and then we'll jump into ZBrush. Creature for 300, giant bull guy, fun thing to sculpt. These are character concepts for Muto, for Godzilla. It started off in 2D, started off as quick little sketches. I did those color pieces first, and then I built the ZBrush model. And these things, they're pretty quick little models. They're not hugely detailed, but you can work so rapidly and get little mistakes that it's got a nice little finish to it. So when I'm dealing with something complex, or this thing's got this complex series, you know, 6 arms and legs that fold over each other, it is nice to move into another dimension, into 3D, where you can really start describing how that works, how that thing, you know, because you can, quite frankly, you can cheat, right, in Photoshop. So you don't have to follow the rules of physics, and you can even cheat a little bit in 3D, but at least it's getting you closer to what the reality of this thing could look like. All right, demo time, huh? I'll show you 3 things as time permits. I brought my own tablet. I have a bigger one than this. And it looks like it had been on the road with Metallica for the last 3 years. It's got like grip tape on it and cracks and holes. So I'm not very nice to my hardware. This is a new tablet though. I'm treating it a little better. 3 things I'll show you. I'll show you that when I normally work in ZBrush, I start with a sphere and I pull a character out of it. No other tricks, just sculpting. And you can definitely work that way. That's the simplest way. Posing for reference, how I would pose or get a figure kind of figured out so I can look at that thing for an illustration that I'm doing. And then how I take these things into Photoshop. Sometimes I'll even use that, you know, if it's a really cool pose and I really want it exactly that, or it's a character that I've already designed out and all the information's in the 3D model, then I'll take that right into Photoshop and paint over on that thing. So now here's a couple of these. I've got a couple of turnarounds I can show. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Is there a clock here? Oh, there is. I got a half hour. I'm fine. These were sculptures for 300 for set pieces that were made huge, monolithic. They hand sculpted these things, but use these models as reference for those. Even just character concept work in ZBrush for a French Beauty and the Beast movie that's going to be coming out at some point. All right. ZBrush. This part will be a little bit more informal, and I've got a bad habit, like all artists. Once I get working, like I forget my surroundings, and I'll probably go quiet. So, if you have any questions or any of that sort of thing, we can dialogue while I work. All right. I start with symmetry on. I keep these tabs over here. One important one is just to activate symmetry so that the marks you make on the left side appear on the right side. That just means you only have to sculpt half a face, half a body, one arm, one leg. And that can happen pretty quick. And I use this clay buildup brush. I like the chunky quality of it. I like digging in and pulling out little edges and ridges and plane breaks. Sorry, my brush sensitivity is a little different. This stage, I'm just going to mass out the big parts of this character's head, where his eyes will go. Whether I choose to do eyes or not, just depends on the shot that I'm doing. I could probably use just this brush for the whole thing. I like the quality of it. I like that it's kind of just put in big shapes. I like all the weird little residue that it creates, little weird ridges, and that stuff already starts looking like skin or folds or the way skin sort of works, which is great. Plot out where my ear will go. And I'll just scribble this stuff in. And then I'll just use Dynamesh, which is somewhat new to ZBrush. It's only been within the last few revisions of the program. Dynamesh will just, I'll show you what happens. You know, you're dealing with 3D polygons. Don't let that scare you if you're a 2D artist. But these things you can stretch these things out until they start to break. You start losing surface to sculpt on. So all Dynamesh does is give you more surface again. And you can use this all the way to the end sculpt. It's great. You get lots of detail.
Vance, we got a question coming through on the
Sure.
Twitter account. So Gel Burt, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, so please forgive me. I'm the worst with this. Do you purely use ZBrush, Or do you also use any type of box modeler at all?
I do. I use
Just a
Modo,
question here, Ranger.
which I grew up on Lightwave, which was like, when I used it, it was like on one floppy disk. That was the whole program, the modeler and the layout. So I used, and Modo was kind of the next version of that. It was the same developers, so it was comfortable for me to use. But I'm noticing that I use those less and less as I learn more things about ZBrush, things that I'll do in there. You know, I think right now my process is a bit of a hybrid. That's how you normally have to transition. Rarely do we just like cold turkey, I'm going to start using Linux, you know, tomorrow. You know, we don't usually do that. We'll start dabbling and moving things over and slowly migrating, and I'm noticing more of my my migration has moved into ZBrush. I like using a tablet. Feels comfortable when I'm moving back and forth between Photoshop and here. It's not like I have to, but there's some things, you know, box modelers, they're great for, and they have their advantages, so.
Great. I got another question here from Brad Meyer. What type of computer or operating system do you prefer to use the most? If you have a question here.
Just one that works. I don't.
Isn't that always the best one? Please boot up.
one that's, yeah. I started on a Mac, then I moved into PCs for most of my career. I was on a PC because I was in games and films and all that sort of thing. And then 2 years ago, I had to do some work on the road, so I picked up a MacBook Pro Retina, realizing that, man, I could work full resolution on this little thing, great little screen. I can run ZBrush on it, Modo, 2D, you know, it's got its limitations, but now I can put it in a bag and go, and it's fantastic. So mostly because my computer's kind of crapping out, my PC, I've been using a Mac. So
We're going to have a question right here. We'll take this question and let you then continue on with your presentation.
I just wanted to know if you're importing from another package like Modo or Maya, what file format usually works the best with ZBrush when you're importing?
Just OBJ. When you go to import, like if you started something in some other program, or maybe there's just the nice thing too for illustrators is that there is there's a treasure trove of free models and things you can just grab quickly if you just need it for a scene and you just need to lay stuff out. Google has a huge amount of models. As long as they're OBJ, they just come right into ZBrush. Nice thing about ZBrush is that it handles heavy geometry really well. So if I got a really complicated model, I know when I bring that into ZBrush, I can even clean it up. I can, you know, get it into something. I can turn it into a game model if I wanted to and put it into a video game engine like Unity or UDK or any of that sort of thing. So it really handles that stuff well. But yeah, OBJ, I think I used GoZ for a while, but then, you know, when programs change and, you know, you update Modo and then now that thing's broke and then now, oh, ZBrush won't do that. And then so I just do OBJ. I'll export from here. If I want to get into Modo, if I want to really put it behind a lens, a camera lens that's specific, you know, and the lighting condition that's specific, then I'll bring it into a 3D program and do all my staging there, pick my shot there. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, just raise your hand. I'll get to you when I can. We'll let Vance continue on with his demo. And the Twitter people, please keep the questions coming through. And then, like Vance said, there is GoZ, which will work actually with Maya and Modo, where you can click a button, everything goes back and forth between all three applications, actually, if you wanted to do that as well. Take it away, Vance.
So I could continue on this thing for the next day or two, but as I keep dynameshing, it keeps remeshing this thing. I think you'll lose a little bit of, you know, as I move this thing. Like if I want to start getting more detail, you see these polygons are kind of coarse. So I can just take my little slider bar, move it up, hit my Dynamesh, and I'll get more resolution in there. See that? And so I can even sculpt in there. If I want to get down to like the pore level or whatever, you know, if I really want to get detail on this guy. So for me, the big tools are clay buildup. This tool called Damn Standard. I'm not cursing. That's what they named it. It cuts in. It's like taking a little needle to the clay, so it's good for putting little creases in as I start to detail this thing out. Can you even use it in the reverse, but to get little ridges and but it's got the same feel. I think if I was painting this thing, I'd be doing the same strokes, going with the form or perpendicular to the form. Snake hook, I like. It pulls those, you can pull out other little shapes. I use it as like a kind of a real distinct move tool, like if I want to move little regions a little more exact than the move tool. It's got kind of a pinpoint at the end. And then if I want to start dealing with the rest of his body, I'll just use that clay buildup, scribble it in there, and start pulling it out. And I'll do this all the way down to the toes. So that's why I like it. I don't want to really just plan out his proportions beforehand, or which I saw many demos, guys that do that, and it's a valid way to work. But I think when I want something quick, this is not about precision right now. This is about just finding a character, doing something conceptual, treating it like it's just you're slapping clay around, see what you get, that sort of thing. Then I'll do it this way. Using the move tool just to move around big pieces of clay. And then you just Dynamesh it again. Any question?
Yes, sir. So do you find that there's a clear difference in the result that you get when you do step back and kind of plan things out broadly first versus just going in and going for the character?
For me, yeah. That's not for everybody, though. You know, some people, that's just how they work. That's just, I think, a work preference, right? That I'm the kind of guy who, the way that I can succeed on that last final piece is to plan it out and to meticulously go into every possible thing to really make sure that this thing, you know, looks like how I've planned it to look. Whether or not that's better or worse, I don't think so. I wouldn't characterize it like that. I think it's just it's a way to work. So it's a preference. So there's sometimes I'll if it's a complex, let's say it's a complex creature, like the Muto creature had some business going on with his forepaws, and he had two intermediate sets of arms that overlapped in a certain way. That those I might work a little different. I might not work this way. I might use another little tool inside of ZBrush called their Z-Sphere, where you can kind of pull out an armature first and kind of work that first. But yeah, I like working that way too. But I think the most of the time, I just want to get in there and start doing it. So, but there are a few jobs that you'll work on that that's more required. Like, we really need to figure this out. That's just where we're at this stage in the game. It's not so much conceptual. It's about practical. Now we got to build this thing with a real foam or whatever, and we want to know what this thing's going to look like. So, yeah.
I got a follow-up, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Have you ever had to do a job where it needed to fit a particular performer or needed to fit something specific inside, and did you develop a workflow at ZBrush for addressing that challenge?
Yeah, you know, I'm doing it right now on a job. I don't do it often because I'm usually in the conceptual phase, but I'm on a project right now. They're going to be filming in a couple of weeks. They already have a live cast of the model that's playing this Queen Witch. So yeah, they gave me that model. I'm doing my thing on top of it. You know, I'm using it and I'm kind of applying. I got her on one layer and then a layer of her duplicated, and I'm just sculpting on her, making sure that when they do the final application, you can treat it like that. That's why I'm saying, like, ZBrush has got so many applications. Like, guys who are manufacturing VFX makeups can use it and get exactly what that makeup should look like, you know. So anyway, this is one way to go. Another way to go, I'll just use ZBrush to pose. So this is a male model I sculpted. It's got a decent amount of resolution so that when I light him, you know, I can get where those cast shadows would happen off his anatomy. There's a few steps I had to use in ZBrush, which I won't go into, but that make this guy easier to pose. He started off as a Dynamesh model, but that's not so much ideal for posing. When you deal with too much geometry, you kind of want this a clean flow. See how these lines wrap around like that deltoid, go down the bicep? Dynamesh doesn't do that in itself. There's another tool in ZBrush that does that called ZRemesher. And so I remeshed him, just pressed a button, it remeshed him, and then you got to go through these steps of rebuilding the detail by just projecting it back in. And I think I did it 3 times. There's 3 levels here of detail. But it's this lowest level. Like if I want to start grabbing this guy and putting him into a pose that I might use, say I have an idea for illustration or something. It'll select through, like if I have the rotate selected and I'm holding down my little control button here, the mask will like, see how it kind of goes with your topology. So if it's really clean in there, if your lines are clean, then you get a nice selection. I can soften that selection. I reversed it, and then I lost it. And then I can kind of bend on there, and it gives me a nice, smooth transition. Or I can just use a lasso what I want. I reverse it out. But really nice. Sometimes I'll just stay in that rotate mode. I'm going to turn off symmetry. So I can just grab one leg. Don't do that. Do this instead.
Vance, there's a couple questions more from Twitter here.
Sure.
So, Ramsey B, how many times do you have to produce a 3D concept for film in ZBrush?
How many times do I have to produce a 3D?
Yeah, they're probably asking more in general, how often do you have to keep going through the concept for when you're working on a film?
Oh, like a single sculpture, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a single piece that you're working on.
Not many times. I might go through, I think the last time I did something like that might have been on like Superman, Batman, did a bunch of different variations, but they weren't iterative. They were just like, here's one idea, and here's a possible different idea, and here's something else. They wanted to see these things kind of sculpted out. And if something is going to be utilized, like if it's a main character or something in a film or a project, and I know this thing has a bunch of different things it needs to do, then yeah, I'll explore it in 3D and really figure out so that then I can use it in shots and do it that way. It's just a resource to me mostly. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers a question.
Yeah, it does, because actually goes
Okay.
right into Nikita had a question, which was asking the development time for your concept. But she was also asking, so when you're working on a concept for too long, do you get bored with that sculpt ever? And if you do, what do you do as an artist to keep going with that piece?
Do I get bored of the sculpt?
Yeah, she's asking in general, when it takes too long to get, do you get bored with that sculpt if it's taking too long to get to?
Bored with it. No, I don't think I get bored with it so much. And I don't think I generally take things to such a high polish resolution. But there's something in that too, to me, that sounds cool to do. So I don't think I have too much burnout. My burnout is more like if I've been in 3D too long and I need to see the sun again, right?
Yeah.
Most 3D artists generally crave.
You mean this kind of this kind of lighting?
We're usually in dark rooms,
Right.
and having monitors
Right.
make us lose our hair. So yeah, it's usually that kind of thing. So I think if I can move on to a publishing job and just look at doing an illustration, or if I can just work on my sketchbook for a while with pencil, or then I think that's for me what I need as far as artistically, a little break. But I tend to ZBrush is different. You know, I worked in 3D for a lot of years, and I'll burn out in regular 3D. You know, what you call the box apps. Box modeling, more than 3D, because I think it still feels like I'm drawing and painting, and I could still, if I want to, paint on this model, put some color on it, you know, go that route.
So that kind of leads into a question from Alex Talang. Do you feel, is it possible to be a 3D concept designer without any 2D work in your portfolio?
Certainly, but you'll be a better one if there's 2D stuff in there. I think if you go through the fundamentals of drawing, if you look at any of the great sculptors over time, Michelangelo, look at his drawings, they're amazing. He really understands form, he understands anatomy, he understands how one thing inserts to another. Is it a prerequisite? I don't think so, but generally, I've noticed, I mean, drawing is an optical illusion, right? I mean, you're taking a 2D plane, a window, and you're putting a world in it. And when we look at that, like, whoa, look how far that goes back. Well, it's not going back, it's just so yeah, potentially you might not know the skill of creating that optical illusion, but you do understand everything mechanically, how something would fit into one thing, you know. So I don't think it's a prerequisite, but I'm a big proponent of educating yourself and not cutting yourself short. I can usually notice it in a young artist's portfolio if they had not had training or anatomy or understand structure or that sort of thing. And it carries through into your sculptures and into your 3D work. I think understanding principles of design and artistic principles, all that stuff for sure helps.
So is there a question in the audience that we can take? And then we'll let Vance finish up. Any question in the audience to give you guys a chance? And when you do guys have a question, please raise your hand so we can get you on the mic so the online people can hear you as well. Coming through. We got a question in the audience, Vance.
Yes, sir. Or ma'am.
Hey,
Whatever.
Great work so far. I noticed
Thank
your lighting setup. What are you using to get such harsh lighting in ZBrush? Is it just a single light over the normal sphere, or are you using any of the special
On my
lighting
examples?
stuff? Yeah.
Most of those are from Modo. So you could take these into any 3D program and use global illumination, use spotlights. I'm slowly using ZBrush to do lighting. It's just different for me. So again, it's more of those hybrid things. If I could do it in ZBrush, Paul will probably show me how in 5 minutes after I get off the stage. Like, what are you doing? You could do it right here like this. So that's all it really requires. I just think I'm used to that. I'd like in a 3D program, especially Modo, where I can look right through the light and I can move that around and I can design it exactly where I want cash shadows to fall. That's what's important to me as an illustrator. So yeah, those examples you saw were from Modo, not from ZBrush. So. I'm going to wrap this guy up here, but I think you get an idea. All right, perfect. So when I'm posing a guy, like getting a harsh selection like that, you know, when you move it, it's pretty much on or off. You might want that in some places, but in areas where there's a lot of flexing going on and stretching, you want a softer selection. So I have these 3 subdivision levels. The higher the level, kind of the tighter you can get that thing with that selection. See what I'm saying? Like this is a real high level, but if I go low, then it's just a softer selection. Yes? To study anatomy? There's lots of ways now. I mean, nowadays, almost every art school can give you a good course in anatomy. For me, it was learning from George Bridgman. He was the instructor for Norman Rockwell. His way of drawing form. I think as an artist, you have to learn a form language. It's the way you draw anatomy, right? Like Disney artists, as opposed to Frank Frazetta. There's a wide spectrum of how you interpret what does a bicep look like when it inserts into and a supinator comes around. You know, a Disney artist might put a sort of a light flare on that, you know, whereas Frazetta would go in or Bridgman would go in and make that thing into like it was a chunk of stone or something in there. So if you want to do it yourself, I would look online. I would look up anatomy instruction. There's this proco.com, which is awesome. Marshall Vandruff was my instructor. He does courses on anatomy, learning from the masters. Certainly, if you want to get into creature design, that is the prerequisite. I don't think you can go as far as you could go without a real understanding of the mechanisms of bone, muscle, tissue, what is happening in body, comparing anatomy to animals, and then drawing from all of that to create crazy variations and, you know, half man, half horse, half bug, half whatever, you know, all that sort of thing. So there's my guy. That might be the pose I want. Contemplative by the lake or whatever I'm going to call this. In ZBrush, I might just use that. I might take a screenshot of that, and that's it. I'm in Painter, I'm in Photoshop, and I might just look at the way that cast shadow's falling there. Maybe I want to change that a little bit. So there is a little lighting tab. I can move that light around, and I can re-render it and see what that looks like. Maybe I want the light from behind. Maybe cast it in a different way. Maybe a little more up top. Something dramatic. I mean, even out of the right out of the box with the default lighting, there's enough information there for me, at least artistically. Then I can go to this render tab, and there's a little thing called render pass, and you can see there's these different channels. There's the regular render, which I can save this off, call it whatever. Maybe I want the alpha. Maybe I just want that silhouette, so I can bring that into Photoshop and use it as a mask, which is really helpful for very complex forms and anatomy.
We gotta follow the iPad light. I think that's the only way you can see it. Look over here.
I see you.
Look over here. We got a question here in the
Yes.
audience real quick for you.
Yeah, so with so many years of experience in 2D and painting, I'm actually kind of amazed that I would have thought that it would just be faster for you to kind of know where the lighting is and to, you know, from those years of experience. I mean, obviously from your artwork here, you have that ability. And
Yeah.
so how often are you, like I guess I'm wondering, where do you go into the need to mock it up in 3D as opposed to just like I've painted 1,000 figures in the last 5 years alone, and I kind of know where the light would fall.
You do know that stuff, but I think for me artistically, I want to keep moving. Like I want to grow. I want to not just do the same trick with lighting. Like I've got a particular, like the sun is usually always right here, and it creates a particular kind of shadow. And I can look after concept or image after image that I've done, and I feel like I've done that 1,000 times. Like I don't explore any other kind of new lighting situation. The old illustrators, they had the advantage of using a model, and illustrators that do it today, that use models, they'll just get a whole new unique setup and they'll paint that. So, so yeah, I think it's more finding like a new pattern, finding a new, and really getting that solid base that you would get from painting from life, that those old artists had. But I want to create creatures, and I want these cool whatever. So I can't find a model for that. So this became like a good tool to like plug into, move my light around. And I'm still falling into the same conventions with this guy. Strong cast shadow creates a certain kind of shape that I like. So it's kind of falling back on what you like anyway. But those are just aesthetics, right? Those are just preferences for myself. 1 minute? All right. All right, let me see where these files went. Oh, there they are. So I'll usually take that mask, I'll copy it into a channel, which is not open. I'm going to do this in 1 minute. And then that becomes a selection mask for me. And now if I want to paint on this guy, or I want to modify the lighting, maybe I didn't get exactly what I wanted, and I didn't want to spend the time. Maybe I wanted a little more blown out. And I'm not going to have much time to paint this dude, but I think you'll get the idea. Maybe I wanted that light to gradate a little more. Then I can go in there right on that model if I prefer to go that route and do it that way. Even, if I want to paste in textures or whatever, or accentuate some of these cast shadows. So I think ZBrush will get me to a certain point, and then I can jump out of there and get back into a 2D program or something of that sort. But that will wrap it up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Vance Kovacs, everyone.
Thank you.